In this tutorial, we are going to be covering water control, more specifically your pigment to water ratios. You are going to need obviously your watercolor, your brushes, and a pencil handy, and a pipette with water. Just to start off, I'm going to be putting a couple drops of water into my well, and we are going to choose one color to work with throughout this tutorial. You can choose whichever color you like. I'm going to be working with the ultramarine deep. So I'm going to pick up a bit of pigment with my brush, and I'm just going to mix that into the water that I've added into my well. We are looking for a light wash color, so you don't want to pick up too much, but you obviously do want to have a little bit of color in there for our first circle that we are going to be applying onto our paper. The consistency here is quite runny, and obviously then it's also quite light in color. The pigment is quite diluted, so obviously a greater water to pigment ratio. For our next swatch, we're going to be adding more pigment, increasing the pigment to water ratio. You want to adjust it enough so that there is a bit of a contrast between the first swatch, the tea layer, and compared to the second one, which is our coffee swatch. Once I've painted in the second swatch, I'll write coffee beneath. Moving on to our third swatch, again, I'm going to pick up some pigment and add that into my mixing well. You should start to notice the liquid inside the mixing well becoming a little bit thicker. I'm now painting in the third swatch, and beneath that I will write milk. So what you should be seeing is as you add more pigment, the mixture inside your mixing well is becoming thicker in consistency. I'm now adding in a little bit more pigment, and you should start to see that it's becoming creamier and creamier. And obviously we are going to swatch in this fourth one, and beneath that write cream. For the last swatch, I'm going to rinse off my brush completely and wipe it off on a paper towel so that it is just slightly damp, and I'm then going to dip straight into the pigment. The consistency now is obviously closer to 100% pigment, and you'll notice when you are painting that onto your paper, it is very buttery in consistency, and there will be a bit of a dry brush effect. Beneath this, you will write butter. I'm going to section off the tea and coffee and the milk and cream together. These I would refer to as our highlight to mid-tones for the tea and coffee. And then for the milk and cream, more our mid to dark tones, with butter being for our darkest values. This tutorial follows very closely one that is hosted by Jenna Rainey on her YouTube channel. It is something that I like to do with my students just as a reminder of the value scale as well as your pigment to water ratios. I highly recommend finding this video on Jenna Rainey's channel and giving it a watch, as it does go into a little bit more detail. For our class's purpose though, this is all we need before we move on to our project.